Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So today I wanted to discuss hosting a Discourse forum in an Incus container. And Discourse is a modern forum platform for the creation of discussion communities. And my discussion.scotti-BYTE.com website is a Discourse forum where I maintain my show notes and other articles that I publish that are not necessarily connected with one of my videos. So in contrast, my Rocket Chat, which is at chat.scotti-BYTE.com, is a real-time chat meant for Q&A and for subscribers to discuss issues concerning topics of interest. And Discourse is a complex application with components in the host OS and also components in a Docker container. So I'm going to tell you here things to know up front, otherwise known as your mileage may vary or maybe buyer beware. So Discourse is an awesome open source community discussion forum software which is used by a huge number of companies and groups. And Discourse is well written, but the most complex app that I've ever self-hosted, and it can present some very challenging problems. So there are many caveats to getting a working Discourse forum, and maintaining it is extremely important, and that includes backups as well as regular updates. So every detail mentioned in this presentation is important to ensure your success. Don't skip any steps, and make sure and do everything in the order described. So let's go see how to install Discourse in an Incus container. Here we are at the command prompt on my Incus server, and one of the first things we want to do is an Incus storage list. And as you'll recall from Incus step-by-step and also LXD step-by-step, your main storage pool by default is called default. And then in both of those videos, we set up that storage pool as being a ZFS storage pool. So one of the issues in installing Discourse is that Discourse requires a Docker overlay 2 file system, and the Docker overlay 2 file system is incompatible with ZFS. To overcome this problem, we're going to create a new storage pool with the command incus storage create dir pool, and this pool will be of type directory. A directory storage pool is one that just stores its files in whatever the native operating system is, and that will overcome the Docker problem of having an overlay 2 file system. So let's create a container with the command incus launch images :Ubuntu 2204. We're naming the name of our container Discourse. We're using the default profile, which simply defines the root file system within the container, and we're using the profile bridge profile, which was discussed in Incus containers step by step, and that's what allows us to create an Incus container that has an address on your main LAN. And then the next parameter is one we haven't used before, and that's -- storage equals dir pool, which will place this container in this new directory storage pool that is called dir pool. And then finally, we have security.nesting equal to true, which is required in any event whenever we have a Docker container nested inside of an Incus container. And then we have security.privileged equal to true, and that's required for some of the file systems that we're going to use. And finally, boot.autostart equals to true means that when the Incus server boots, the Discourse container will automatically start. So we hit enter, and that creates the container. One of the really great reasons to use Incus containers is how fast and easy they are to create, and you could see that there. When I do an Incus list here, we see our new Discourse container. up and running with an address of 172.16.1.168, which is in fact on my main LAN. Now that our new Incus container is up and running, we connect to it with the command Incus shell Discourse. Once we get inside the container, it's a best practice to take all of the updates with an apt update & apt upgrade -y. Next, I like to add a new user account, so I'm going to do an add user Scott, and this is so that we can SSH into the terminal later on if we need to connect to the server for maintenance purposes. And then I'm going to give Scott sudo privilege with usermod -a G space sudo Scott. We install the dependencies for our installation with an apt install curl, nano, git, the Fuse overlays, which are going to be required to access the Fuse file system on the Incus host, and OpenSSH server. We do a -y so we're not prompted. Since Discourse uses Docker, we're going to go ahead and install Docker with the script from the Docker website. And now we want to verify that Docker is using the overlay 2 file system, and we do so by doing a docker info, and we pipe it to grep for the storage driver. And you can see here that it's using the overlay 2 storage driver, which is required for Discourse. Let's download the Discourse package, and we do so with a git clone that brings it down and puts it in the /var/discourse folder, and the next thing we want to do is to move over to that folder. We want to copy the standalone installation template from a file called standalone.yaml over to app.yaml in the containers subfolder of /var/discourse. Now we invoke the nano editor with the nano containers /app.yaml to edit the YAML configuration file for Discourse. We want to scroll down in the configuration file to where we see the definition for the website, and here you can see that it is discourse.example.com. In my case, I'm going to enter forum.scotti-BYTE.com for our test. From there, we scroll down a little bit further and we have developer emails, and you can see that they have 2 here listed with a comma, and I'm going to go ahead and enter my email address, which is vmsman@gmail.com. From there, I scroll down a bit further and we have the SMTP server name. I'm going to go ahead and use Gmail's SMTP server with my Gmail account, so it's going to be smtp.gmail.com. And then I'm going to uncomment the SMTP port of 587 because that is correct for Google Mail. And then down here in the username, I'm going to enter again vmsman@gmail.com. Now, if you have 2-factor authentication turned on for your Google account, then you're going to want to go over to accounts.google.com, and you're going to want to search for app passwords and grant yourself an app password for this account, and it will give you back a cryptic string of characters, and this one will be wiped out after this particular video, but that's what mine is here. And I scroll down and there is one other thing I want to do, and that is to uncomment the Discourse notification email, and I'll go ahead and make it also vmsman@gmail.com. And then as we scroll down the page, they have some things for Let's Encrypt, and they have some things for the MaxMind geolocation IP. We're not going to do either one of those, and the primary reason for that is because we are going to let Nginx Proxy Manager handle our SSL certificate from Let's Encrypt. So let's do a Control-O and enter to write the file out, and a Control-X to exit the nano editor. Now that the configuration file has been completed, we're going to execute the bootstrap command, which is /launcher bootstrap space app. And we hit enter, and that will go ahead and download the Docker container components as well as perform the other build operations to make a functional Discourse site. Now that the bootstrap operation has completed, the next step is to head up to your web browser and to enter your Nginx proxy manager. Go ahead and click on your proxy host and click to add a proxy host. In my case, my subdomain was forum.scotti-BYTE.com, and I hit a tab to accept that. And then my address of my container is 172.16.1.168. And then I will enter here port 80. WebSocket support is on. Block common exploits is on. I go over to the SSL tab and I say request a new certificate. And then I say I agree to the Let's Encrypt terms of service and click save. Once your proxy has been added, you want to go down and find it in the list and click on the three dots to the right, click on edit, go into SSL, turn on force SSL, and save it once again. Back at the command line, you'll notice that it says to execute a .launcher start app, and so that's what we're going to go ahead and do here. Note that we got a message that says that our configuration file is world readable and that we should go out and secure that file. So I go ahead and copy that and then execute the chmod command, and we're done with that. Back in the web browser, I go ahead and type in my subdomain name in a new tab, which is forum.scotti-BYTE.com, and I hit enter. And we get, congratulations, you have installed Discourse. At this point, we want to go ahead and register, so I click the register button. It will have my email address as the default for the admin account, and I'm going to go ahead and type in a username, which I'm going to make Scott, and then down here it's going to ask for at least a 15-character password. So now I go ahead and enter my password, and then I click on the register button. And then you should be getting an activation email in your Gmail. Your activation email should come within a couple of seconds, and it will look something like this. Welcome to Discourse. Click the following link. Once you click the link, it will open another tab in your web browser, and you simply click here to activate your account. Once that happens, it'll come up and ask you for the name of your community. So I could say something like Scotti-BYTE forum. And then down here you can give an example of something. You can say place to discuss stuff. So standard configuration things. And then I have my language as English US. I click next, and then you have choices here as far as whether you want to enable chat, your sidebar, that sort of thing. I click next, and then you can simply click jump in, and I'm on my container. So this is a new Discourse instance that you see here. I can create posts and so on. If I go ahead and log out of this with the logout command, it will allow me to log back in by clicking login. So now I should be able to log in by typing in either my username or my email address, and then I go ahead and enter my password and click login. And then I'm logged in, and of course down here I can do things like click on the admin. Since I'm an admin, it'll go out there and tell you that it's currently completely up to date. We have the ability to back things up and all kinds of things, but we're not going to deep dive into how to use Discourse. At this point in time, you have a fully functional Discourse forum inside of an Incus container. So in summary, we learned that the Docker components of Discourse use the overlay 2 file system, which is incompatible with a ZFS storage pool. And we needed to create a directory-based storage pool for Discourse. So the Incus Discourse container needs not only security.nesting equal to true, but it also needs security.privilege set equal to true in order to support access to the Fuse file system component of the Incus server. And Discourse requires a properly configured SMTP mail server, or you will be unable to access the system. Discourse requires a manual configuration of the app.yml file and a bootstrap operation rather than the standard installation procedure to work in an Incus container. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, and we'll see you next time.